Indiana was like getting slapped in the face hard by your pastor when you're expecting the communion wafer. But the thing about it is too is when this rebuilding process was happening, peaks and valleys, right? There's the lows, right, are still going to be there in this year, in year two, as we expected. Again, I just think a lot of us kind of got this, and naturally so with the national media also getting a little bit ahead of themselves, coming into the season, talking about the early slate of games and everybody talking about 6-0 and potentially 7-0 going to Ohio State. And then, Indiana's a sexy team. Nebraska, coming into that game, had a loss then and they lose that game and then they kind of like lose that luster, right? But I think the biggest thing that in year two, this wasn't supposed to be a playoff year. And I know kind of the conversation turned into that earlier on this season, how things went and how things were going. However, this season was never meant to be a playoff season, Big Ten championship season. This was meant to be a season of turning the corner. And then that way we can fully kind of turn the corners in year 3, 4, 5 under Matt Rule. And I think this is what we're starting to see. And Matt Rule even indicated as much in his post-game press conference where he talked about the championship mentality in the locker room and the fact that he saw that for the first time. And in a way, it's almost as if the Indiana game was just a punch in the mouth and a feeling that these guys don't want to feel again, right? These guys are tired of losing. They're tired of being embarrassed. And I think we finally saw that edge to them in the way they responded. The way they responded against Ohio State is a way that I have not seen them respond in a long, long time in terms of just pure player effort across the board. The effort was there. The defensive line was firing off of the football. In the Indiana game, it looked like once the backs got against the wall, they were about a half beat late on everything, right? Indiana did a good job of spreading out the field. What Indiana did very well is Indiana normally targets the middle of the field, right? But when they played us, they targeted the sidelines as well. And you saw them throw the 50-50 balls up towards the sideline. And, we had good coverage on them on occasion. But at the same time, their receivers were going up and making better play on the ball, and Curtis Rourke was putting it where they could get it. Now, that spread Nebraska's defense out and to the point where, they were dictating where our defense went versus us dictating where we go. And that's where the issue lies with this defense. It happened against Illinois and it happened against Indiana. Those are the two games where this defense was on their heels. And like I said, both times they've responded, but each time I think we learned a little something different. But each time also Tony White adds a little different element to his defensive game plan. And so seeing the adjustments that he's made over time too, from Illinois to Rutgers to just, putting an extra hand in the dirt or getting more guys in that front. And then to last week to just kind of changing the gap schemes and how we're attacking and changing the fronts and overloading, certain sides of the formation and just firing off the football. And it seemed like Nebraska's desire to make a play was stronger than Ohio State's. It seemed like Ohio State's offensive line was on their heels. It's just if Nebraska could score some points, it'd be fantastic. But let me go into some of your comments here. Christian, what's going on, Christian, man? Appreciate you hopping in here. I'm a Nebraska-born Huskers fan who currently lives in Houston, Texas. Let's go. You stole the Twitter name that I wanted before I even knew I wanted it. My bad, Christian. I was sitting there. I was like, because I made mine in August of 2023, so I wasn't sure what to name it. But yeah, man. Nice. I mean, nice to know that there's a pretty good contingent of Husker fans still out in Houston, though. I know there's a lot out. I'm in AZ now. I moved out to Arizona a few years back, but there's a huge alumni group here called Huskers in Arizona. There's about 7 Husker bars in this valley, in this area, that are dedicated towards Nebraska. And whenever the games come on Saturday, essentially what they'll do is they kind of make the whole, they section the place out, or they really just, the bar becomes for Nebraska fans and for the alumni group. So nobody's there unless you're there for the watch party. And it's kind of first come, first serve that fills up quick. Some of the places we have balloons on the back of the chair where we'd let them go. But yeah, so nice to know that there's still a big contingent of Husker fans out in Houston too. I think our wide receivers are running really poor routes, in my opinion, is hurting Dylan. There's some timing stuff too. I will say that there is some timing stuff. I brought some of it up last week, but yes, some of the timing stuff, and some of the timing stuff I do think is just a little bit of with Dylan. There are times where I think he's just a half beat late, and I don't think it's his fault necessarily. I think right now he's still. You got to think earlier this season when Dylan wasn't taking a lot of hits, taking a lot of pressure, right, and he was just letting it rip, free reign, right, but the Rutgers game, he started taking some hits, right? He kind of took a little bit of a beating, started to take a little bit of beating in that Rutgers game, and then we move forward, um, to the Indiana game, and coming off of that week, and him taking those hits and the offense being a little bit of out of sorts and stagnant. I think the biggest thing coming into Indiana was going to try to be to get him in a rhythm because he was feeling such out of a rhythm, out of sorts. And of course, that wasn't able to happen. So I think a lot of it was just, I think a lot of it's him thinking and trying to do a little too much himself. And now I know he defended the play calling today, saying, you know, Satterfield's not the one who goes out and executes these plays. But just knowing what I know from offense and how to attack defenses, the systems that we're using and the things that we're doing are not creative enough or playing to our strengths enough still. One thing I will say, like I'll get into in just a second, average depth of target did improve a little bit, right? So, we were seeing the ball a little bit more downfield, well, not fully downfield, but what I'm talking about when average depth of target, what average depth of target is for those that don't know, it's a stat that tracks how far the ball travels, air yards basically, how far the ball travels in the air per target to a receiver. So let's say you target Fedoni, 5 times, but you're throwing, you're at the goal line, he's at the 10-yard line, and you throw it to him 5 times and you complete it 5 times. That's an average depth of target of 10. Even if he runs for 20 yards, your average depth of target is still 10 yards because that ball traveled 10 yards in the air, just so y'all know what that means. And so when that improves by a little bit, that is actually significant because typically the average depth of target, a yard of difference is a fair, jump in regards to that, because again, that's just the how much the ball is traveling in the air. And it seemed like each level, whether it be short, intermediate, deep, that increased for Nebraska. So at least there is an element of that, kind of pushing the ball a little further down the field. However, it's the red zone play calling and the screens and jet sweeps. Yeah, we know. That's what's happening in the red zone, though. That is where we are dying out right now. Is between the 20s, we seem to be okay. Inside the 20s, not so much. What's going on, Jackson? Appreciate you hopping in here. I said it on every platform I'm on. I know the cop-out answer, but I won't truly know how I feel about the Ohio State game until I see it perform against UCLA, if that makes sense. Yep, it does. But I was saying I was going to judge it off the response to the Indiana game because that's what, to me, that's what truly shows what this team is made of, is how they respond after that embarrassment in a week where, the OC was getting chastised and the whole team was getting beat down and the defense was getting beat down. For them to respond like that quick reset mentality of the defense is what gives me a lot of hope. But yeah, that's fair. I got Indiana over Ohio State. I can't do that. I just, Ohio State is still the better team. Ohio State's 3 deep at every position. Indiana's a fun story. I think they can, of course. But Ohio State's the better team by a pretty fair margin, in my opinion, still, just because, like I said, they have the depth. Ohio State has the talent and they have the depth. And I think Ohio State's still kind of in a prime position to win that game by a couple scores. And now you got to look at this. Ohio State's got this on film as well. And they're going to respond from this probably as well. So they're going to see some stuff on the film that came up in this game that can make them better going forward. And one of the things that makes Ohio State so good is that they don't stay down, right? The Oregon loss coming off of that, they come into this game and they come out a little flat. I don't think I expect them to be flat 3 weeks in a row. Well, I mean, they're not playing them till down the road, but or a couple weeks. So wait, when is it? Is it this weekend? Is it next weekend? But either way, I still think like Ohio State, yeah. But the the odds of them winning are much, much greater now. But yeah, I still can't do that. I still think it's like everybody's just like, this is the sexy fun pick. Ohio State has just been so good for so long that everybody's like, okay, like it's Ohio State. It's boring. But like now we have Indiana. And we're like, okay, it would be nice if Indiana can go and pull an upset and maybe be in the top 5 instead of Ohio State. I think that's kind of what we're getting into with that. H-Town, yes, sir. H-Town, hold it down. They don't know what that means. Husker fan, grew up in Lincoln in North Carolina, repping all over the country, man. Love to see it. Don't also misreads the defense at times, misses open receivers, but yeah, yes, that is true. Yeah, I'm not exonerating him at all. I think a lot of him missing receivers too is him tightening up and being a little bit uh just like I said, thinking, because when you're thinking, you're tight, and he's not trusting his mechanics. And typically, when you're releasing that football, you want everything to flow. Everything's got to be loose. Everything's got to flow. And you just kind of let it, you flick it, and kind of work on your follow through. Make sure you turn that thumb over and all that. But like when you're thinking, right, you're really, everything's going to be tighter. Your arm's going to be tighter. So that ball's just not floating. You're gripping it a little tighter. Your adrenaline's pumping. So you're pushing it out a little further. Like, so those are things that he needs to dial in. And I think as he gets more comfortable, and I think as the offense gets him more comfortable, and if Satterfield is able to get more of a flow and a rhythm in offense, that can help some of these overthrows as well. But yes, he does need to start hitting some of these guys, because there are some wide open guys that it's, yeah, like a couple times last week. Yeah. I saw one play where Ohio State brought one more pass rusher than we had blockers. Dylan had a free ball out to Barney over the middle when he was hot. Not sure where it broke down for Dylan on that play. Yes, let me see. So one play where brought one more pass rusher and we had blockers. Dylan had a free ball out to Barney over the middle when he was hot. Not sure where it broke down for Dylan on that play. Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and one of the things that UCLA's quarterback Ethan Garbers is good at, is actually identifying those things, those blitzes, and where they're coming from. And I actually talked about last week, when they run cover 0 or something like that. One of the things that Dylan needs to get good at is understanding, like, okay, we're bringing pressure off of, let's say we're bringing pressure from the slot cornerback spot, right? We have a receiver lined up in the slot. Well, now that linebacker is going to have to rotate over to that slot guy. So you got a split second window of that guy having to rotate over to be able to just whip it out to him real quick, right? Make a hot read, be like pressure, boom, get it out to him before that linebacker can cross over, and just throw it where the pressure's coming from. And so, yeah, that is something, those hot reads is something that, we're going to see a lot of from Ethan Garbers this weekend, because I do believe we're going to get a lot of pressure on him. And like I said, that's something he's good at. Taco Tuesday. Hope I didn't miss out on Nebraska Voice of College Football free tacos, man. I don't know if y'all want free tacos from me. I ain't handing them out. But I'm in Arizona, so there are a lot of good taco places out here, though. I notice that every time Dylan overthrows wide open touchdowns, it seems to be off his back foot. Not sure if to look back again to confirm. So one of the things to know about Dylan's mechanics is they are slightly unorthodox as it is. With Jeff Christensen, the quarterback coach, he's very, very focused on that lower body and keeping that back knee kind of, up in kind of, I'm having a hard time describing it. It'd be easier to show it to you, but keeping that left leg not too back, not to where you're too squared, trying to keep it bladed and really kind of following through with that. But I do think some of the stuff that if he just does sit a little bit more on his base, and really just kind of go through the motions and of him being just a pocket quarterback as opposed to trying to throw off platform and stuff like that, I think that will serve him pretty well. So, and you don't want to get him too used to throwing off platform when he doesn't have to, right? Because naturally you're not going to be ever as accurate off platform.